Good morning. Welcome to virtual worship with us here at the First Parish in Framingham. I am the Reverend Aaron Stockwell, Senior Minister, and it's an honor and privilege to serve in this role here. Unitarian Universalism is a faith for all souls. It doesn't matter your age, how you identify, how you move around in the world, who you love. What matters is that you are here, a part of this virtual but very real community. If this is your first time joining us for worship, I'm so glad that you have made the decision to watch this service. If you need more information about what Unitarian Universalism is or who we at First Parish in Framingham are, be sure to click the second link below. The chancel decorations right there are by the auction committee. If you haven't already bid on something in our auction, be sure to bid now. And if you already have bid on something, bid early and bid often. This is one of the ways that we support our self-sustaining and self-supporting congregation. Friends, love has held our congregation together since 1701. It's a love that is wider and larger than these buildings that we gather in. So welcome to First Parish in Framingham. Marianne Orlando will read our opening words.
To Savor the World or Save It by Richard S. Gilbert. I rise in the morning, torn between the desire to save the world or to savor it, to serve life or to enjoy it, to savor the sweet taste of my own joy or to share the bitter cup of my neighbor, to celebrate life with exuberant step or to struggle with the life of the heavy laden. What am I to do when the guilt at my bounty clouds the sky of my vision? When the glow which lights my every day illumines the hurting world around me? To savor the world or save it? God of justice, if such there be, Take from me the burden of my question. Let me praise my plenitude without limit. Let me cast from my eyes all troubled folk. No, you will not let me be. You will not stop my ears to the cries of the hurt and the hungry. You will not close my eyes to the sight of the afflicted. What is that you say? To save, one must serve. To savor, one must save. The one will not stand without the other. Forgive me in my preoccupation with myself, in my concern for my own life. I had forgotten. Forgive me, God of justice. Forgive me and make me whole.
Thanks, Marianne. I invite you, if you haven't already, to get a candle. And as I light the chalice in our sanctuary, and as the children of our congregation light their chalices at home, you too are invited to kindle a flame at home. Once you have done so, I invite you to type into the chat, "The chalice is lit in our home," or "The chalice is lit in my home."
From all that dwell below the skies, let sons of hope and faith arise. Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung, through every land, by every tongue.
Love is the doctrine of our church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve all life with compassion, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. This is our great covenant, one with another and with our God.
This week we celebrated Earth Day, and it got me thinking about how we interact with the world and how our perspective changes depending on who or what we are and how we appreciate this earth that we live on. And it reminded me of this story, "A Stone Sat Still" by Brendan Wenzel, that I'd love to share with you today. A stone sat still with the water, grass, and dirt, and it was as it was, where it was in the world. And the stone was dark. And the stone was bright. And the stone was loud. That seagull cracking its shell against the stone. And the stone was quiet. And it sat where it sat, with the water, grass, and dirt. And it was as it was, where it was in the world. And the stone was rough, and the stone was smooth. I guess it depends on what kind of body you have, whether your rock is soft or rough or smooth. And the stone was green, red, purple, and blue. And the stone was a pebble. and the stone was a hill. A tiny little beetle. And the stone was a feel, and the stone was a smell. And it sat where it sat, with the water, grass, and dirt, and it was as it was, where it was, in the world. And the stone was the wild, and the stone was a home. And the stone was a kitchen, and the stone was a throne. And the stone was a marker, and a map, and a maze. A danger, a haven, a story, a stage. And the stone was a blink, and the stone was an age. See the bird passing over? So fast, it was just a blink. But the snail, it was an age for him to pass through the stone. And the stone was an island, and the stone was a wave. And the stone was a memory. And the stone was always. Have you ever known such a place? Where with water, grass, and dirt, a stone sits still in the world. What happened to our stone in the story? It was a home. It was the wild. So very many different animals interacted with our stone in so very many different ways, all depending on who they were in the world. So I invite you, as you reflect on Earth Day, to think of that special spot on this planet, wherever it is, and how you might protect it, just as these animals saw to the keeping of the stone.
In our community, there is great joy and there is also great sorrow. This is the time in our service that we set aside for sharing of those things which brought a smile to our face or a tear to our eye. There'll be prompts on this screen as we light the candles that will give a better order to our sharing. Of course, in this time when we are gathering virtually, privacy cannot be guaranteed. So if there's something that you need to let me know about but you don't wish to share with others, please do send me an email. I'll be sure to get in touch with you.
Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Sing with me, sing with me, sing with me, oh my soul. Sing with me, oh my soul. Stay with me, stay with me, stay with me, oh my soul. Stay with me, stay with me, stay with me, oh my soul. Dance with me, dance with me, dance with me, oh my soul. Dance with me, dance with me, dance with me, oh my soul. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul.
O Spirit of life and love, Spirit of being, becoming, and belonging, weaver of the web of life and also the web of life itself, the one who knew us before we were born, before we made an appearance in the world, before we had a name, and who calls us by our first name, which is beloved. I give thanks. We give thanks for all that we have, even if what we have is very little. We orient ourselves to gratitude. We shed tears for all those who are lonely, all those who are ill, all those who live with addiction or pain. May we be motivated to be love's hands in the world. We weep for all of the injustice in the world this week. It feels like it was a tough week because it was. I'm not celebrating the verdict in the murder trial where a jury decided that yes, a former police officer murdered George Floyd. Because that's not justice, that's accountability. So much more must be done to protect Black and brown lives in our country, especially when this week more Black lives were killed by police. Black children. I say some of their names: Ma'Khia Bryant, Dante Wright. But I know that there are other names, too many names. I also lift up the victims of mass shootings, including those who practice the Sikh faith, who died in Indianapolis at a FedEx warehouse. And I also weep knowing that in a couple of years I will have forgotten the details of this mass shooting. How long will it take? How long? May we hold ourselves gently. We are humans, perfectly and imperfectly made. I say these words and do all things for love's sake. Amen. And now let us sit in our quiet so that we might rest or listen or pray the prayers of our own hearts. And as we leave this time of quiet, I invite you to pay attention to 3 breaths. The first is a breath of gratitude for the present. The second is a breath of gratitude for the past. And the final is a breath of gratitude for the future. Each time we gather, we take a moment to consider the generosity that we have in our hearts and in our lives. And we make a choice to give, to support the work and the mission of this self-sustaining congregation. I share these words by Ellen Johnson Fay, who reminds us that the offering is a sacrament of the free church. It is supported by the voluntary generosity of all who join with us. The offering will now be given and received in grateful appreciation of our shared hopes and values. Though we are unable to pass our offering plates, be sure to click the second link below this video to support the work of this congregation. Today I am actually going to share our reading twice. First time I'm reading it a little bit faster than normal, and the second time I'm reading it slower. I invite you to pay attention to these words. Our reading today is Hamatrea by Ralph Waldo Emerson. He writes, Bulkley, Hunt, Willard, Hosmer, Marion, Flint possessed the land which rendered to their toil hay, corn, roots, hemp, flax, apples, wool, and wood. Each of these landlords walked amidst his farm, saying, "'Tis mine, my children's, and my name's. How sweet the west wind sounds in my own trees. How graceful climb those shadows on my hill. I fancy these pure waters, and the flags know me, as does my dog. We sympathize, and I affirm my actions smack of the soil." Where are these men, asleep beneath their grounds, and strangers fond as they their furrows plow? Earth laughs in flowers to see her boastful boys, earth proud, proud of the earth which is not theirs, who steer the plow but cannot steer their feet clear of the grave. They added ridge to valley, brook to pond, and sighed for all that bounded their domain. This suits me for a pasture. That's my park. We have clay, lime, gravel, granite ledge, and misty lowland where to go for peat. The land is well, lies fairly to the south. 'Tis good, when you have crossed the sea and back, to find the sit-fast acres where you left them. Ah, the hot owner sees not death, who adds him to his land a lump of mold the more. Hear what the earth says. Mine and yours, mine not yours, earth endures, stars abide and shine down on the old sea. Old are the shores, but where are old men? I who have seen much, such have I never seen. The lawyer's deed ran sure in tale to them and to their heirs, who shall succeed without fail forevermore. Here is the land, shaggy with wood, with its old valley mound and flood, but the heritors fled like the flood's foam, the lawyer and their laws, and the kingdom clean swept herefrom. They called me theirs who so controlled me, yet everyone who wished to stay and is gone. How am I theirs if they cannot hold me, but I hold them? When I heard the earth song, I was no longer brave. My avarice cooled like lust in the chill of the grave. Bulkley, Hunt, Willard, Hosmer, Marion, Flint possessed the land which rendered to their toil hay, corn, roots, hemp, flax, apples, wool, and wood. Each of these landlords walked amidst his farm, saying, "'Tis mine, my children's, and my name's. How sweet the west wind sounds in my own trees. How graceful climb those shadows on my hill. I fancy these pure waters and the flags know me, as does my dog. We sympathize, and I affirm my actions smack of the soil. Where are these men? asleep beneath their grounds, and strangers fond as they their furrows plow. Earth laughs and flowers to see her boastful boys. Earth proud, proud of the earth which is not theirs, who steer the plow but cannot steer their feet clear of the grave. They added ridge to valley, brook to pond and side for all that bounded their domain. This suits me for a pasture. That's my park. We must have clay, lime, gravel, and granite ledge and misty lowland, where to go for peat. The land is well, lies fairly to the south. 'Tis good when you have crossed the sea and back, to find the sit-fast acres where you left them. Ah, the hot owner sees not death, who adds him to his land a lump of mold the more. Hear what the earth say. And this is a poem that Emerson added called Earth Song. Mine and yours, mine not yours. Earth endures, stars abide, shine down in the old sea. Old are the shores, but where are old men? I who have seen much, such have I never seen. The lawyer's deed ran sure, entail to them and to their heirs, who shall succeed without fail forevermore. Here is the land shaggy with wood, with its old valley, mound and flood, but the heritors fled like the flood's foam. The lawyer and the laws and the kingdom clean swept herefrom. They called me theirs, who so controlled me. Yet everyone wished to stay and is gone. How am I theirs if they cannot hold me, but I hold them? When I heard the earth song, I was no longer brave. My avarice cooled like lust in the chill of the grave. Earth Day has always been a spiritual and a religious observance for me. The first sermon I ever preached was actually on Earth Day when I was a high school senior. Perhaps that's because being outdoors and in nature has always been the primary place where I recharge myself and where I encounter something larger than myself. Call it mystery, call it the divine, call it God. There isn't much to draw on, I'll admit, from that first sermon. It was, after all, a first sermon, and as is typical of that genre, I tried to cover a subject that was a mile wide, and the sermon ended up being about an inch deep. But in that sermon, I preached about our responsibility to take care of the earth, and that's about all I remember from it. The research for it was an assignment for a class on world religions, investigating the environmental commitments of various world religions. This seems to always be an important and a religious observance to me. If you've been a Unitarian Universalist for a while, you may remember that the 7 principles used to only number 6 and the 6 sources used to only number 5. We have added this intentional environmental focus, which I think is good for our religion. And when it comes to liberal expressions of faith, all groups, I think, agree that we have really done damage to the earth. My seminary offered an interfaith class on what we called biblical ecology. And in that class, we had rabbinical school students with Christian and Unitarian Universalist seminarians. It was a wonderful class. We read the Bible and Wendell Berry, and we investigated the biblical roots of the study of nature and the protection of it as well. Years later, I was reminiscing about how good that class was with one of the professors, and he stopped me and he said, yeah, it was a good class, all right, but the faculty, we honestly thought that it was a failure. Normally, when we get a bunch of interfaith students together, y'all would talk about how Christians got Jesus out of the Jewish book of Isaiah, and the Unitarians would then argue about the nature of Jesus, if he was the Son of God or not. But in that class, y'all agreed that we had really messed up the earth. The thing that we learned is that we have to save and savor the world. E.B. White's quote that inspired our call to worship, as well as the sermon title, comes from a 1969 New York Times article, an interview that E.B. White had with Israel Shanker. The complete quote that it comes from is this: "Each morning I awake torn between a desire to save the world and an inclination to savor it. This makes it hard to plan the day, but if we forget to savor the world, what possible reason do we have for saving it? In a way, savoring must come first." That's so true. We have to savor first. We cannot be in battle mode all the time. We must savor the sunset. We must notice how the birds fly or consider the resilience of moss. We must pause to consider all of the hands that brought the food to our table. We must recall, perhaps, that clean water that we bring to our lips when we drink. And we must remember that that clean water is a privilege. When you eat or drink something, perhaps take a bite or two slowly. Recall the places where those ingredients that you're eating were grown, where the spices and herbs were harvested from. Recall the miles that it took to get to your plate. Recall the people who cooked it. Think about where they learned those skills. I would say consider taking a walk outside, but I know that for some that is a challenge. So think about the sunset and the sunrise. Notice how the light is different at different times during the day on your wall. Once you have sufficiently savored the world, I think you have no choice but to want to ensure that it stays the same for future generations, or at least conserved for those future generations. If saving the world feels daunting, it's because it is. I think that we have been sold a lie that places environmental responsibility solely on individuals, and we've been sold that lie by corporations. The vast majority of carbon emissions come from corporations. It's always wise to interrogate why and where we learn facts like that. For instance, I recently learned that in the 1950s, the plastics industry started promoting the idea that single-use plastic was the way to go. And then after we realized how damaging single-use plastics could be, that same industry launched a vast campaign for neighborhood recycling programs, knowing that by and large, plastics can't be recycled. This task of saving the world feels daunting, like whatever small steps we won't do to budge things much. But from the Perkey vote, we are reminded, you are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to desist from it. If collectively the individuals of the world decided to do nothing about this climate-changed world, then yeah, nothing indeed would happen. But if we did remind ourselves that small is all and that our own patterns fractal out, maybe we could have an impact on reducing climate change. We have to practice small in order to accomplish something large. My first summer out of college, after college, I had a job building a hiking trail in the mountains of New Mexico. And the end goal was actually to teach others how to build a hiking trail. So we had to not just learn the technique of hiking trail, but also to learn how to teach it. And rather than focusing on building the entire trail while we learned, which would have been several thousand yards, we focused on building trail in about 5 yards in front of us, learning how to take that trail from just a surveyed trail on a stake line to a finished trail. We started small and focused on the small patch of earth in front of us. Emerson's Hamatrea and Earth Song speak to me about the necessity to adopt a long view. Others have called this deep time. Whenever I read this poem, the phrase that always catches my attention is mine and yours, mine not yours. Earth endures. I who have seen much, such have I never seen. As I hear those words, I smell the enduring smell of dirt. I feel that moist dirt now dried on my hands. I also consider the people who lived on that land before those Concordian families that Emerson lists at the beginning of the poem. As I read this poem, the invitation to me in the next few days is to get outside, to feel the wind in my hair, and to do what I can to ensure future generations can feel the same wind. And hopefully I can be moved to some action so that future generations will know I did something. So what will you do? Save or savor? I hope that by now you realize that that is a false choice. If the works of saving the world feels too overwhelming, let a sunbeam recharge you. Pay attention to the leaves unfurling or the way that the rain falls without calculation or practice. I hope that by also paying attention, we realize that this earth, this world, is worth saving. May it be so, and amen. Friends, our time together is drawing to a close. So I invite you to extinguish the chalices that you have lit. And once you have extinguished the chalice, I invite you to type into the chat that I carry the flame or we carry the flame. And as we close our browser windows and maybe head over to our Zoom coffee hour, or perhaps log off to enjoy the rest of the day, let us take the light of love out into the world and use it to brighten our pathways. And when we need to rest or recharge, be challenged or affirmed, may that light guide us safely back. May we hold the light always, and the light hold us always. Amen. And go in peace.